They laughed while popping his balloons, but he was just trying to survive. An old man stood silently at the corner of a bustling New York City street, his back slightly hunched from age and exhaustion. Clutched in his trembling hand was a wooden stick tied with colorful helium balloons. They danced in the air with life, even as the man himself looked worn and faded. His overcoat was frayed at the sleeves, his shoes wrapped in duct tape. A cardboard sign leaned against his folding chair. $1, help me get home to my wife. As streams of people passed, some barely glanced at him. Others paused only to mock. Teenagers walked up, laughed, and filmed themselves popping the balloons. "Come on, it's just rubber," one of them sneered while holding a lighter close to a red balloon. The balloon burst with a loud pop, causing the old man to flinch. Laughter erupted, and they walked away, high-fiving and posting their video online. But no one knew why he was there. No one asked. No one saw the pain behind his watery eyes, until one rainy afternoon, a stranger in a gray hoodie stopped and everything changed. Please support us by subscribe, like, and share for more with activating the notification bell. Thank you. On a cold Monday morning, 74-year-old Edward Eddie Callahan arrived at the same city corner he'd stood at for over 3 months. The sidewalk was damp, the wind sharp, but Eddie moved like clockwork. His helium tank hissed to life as he began inflating balloons in shades of red, blue, yellow, and silver. He arranged them carefully, tying each to a wooden stick before gently placing them in a bucket beside his chair. He wasn't begging. He wasn't shouting. He wasn't even asking for attention. Eddie was simply trying to sell joy one balloon at a time. His price was modest, $1. His goal was simple: earn enough to get back to his wife, Margaret, in Vermont. But to most people, Eddie was invisible. Few noticed the sign in front of him. Children pointed at the balloons, but their parents tugged them away. Some passersby chuckled, treating the old man like a sidewalk joke. Teenagers mocked his wrinkled face and quiet demeanor. Others filmed TikToks, staging balloon-popping pranks for likes and followers. One group in particular stood out. 5 young men, full of swagger and noise, approached. One pulled out a lighter and deliberately popped a balloon. Oops, he smirked. Guess it wasn't durable. Eddie didn't retaliate. He didn't even raise his voice. He just looked at the sky, murmured something under his breath, and filled another balloon. A piece of him deflated with each pop, but he remained rooted. He had no choice. Before he was a man on the street corner, Eddie Callahan had lived a full and meaningful life. He had spent over 40 years teaching high school art, known among students for his warm smile and unorthodox lessons. He was the teacher who let kids paint their feelings and once used balloons to teach color blending and light refraction. Students adored him. So did his wife, Margaret. Eddie and Margaret had a quiet, loving life in a small Vermont town. Their house was modest, surrounded by wildflowers and ivy. Retirement had come peacefully until a cruel twist changed everything. Margaret suffered a stroke. Her once lively spirit dimmed, and medical bills began to drain their savings to afford her care. Eddie sold their house and car, moved in with his niece in Brooklyn, while Margaret remained in a nursing facility in Vermont. Her condition too fragile for travel. Eddie promised her he'd return soon. But time passed. He struggled to find work and refused to beg or burden others. That's when he remembered the balloons. He started with a small helium tank and a batch of bright balloons. Each color symbolized something: red for love, his endless love for Margaret; blue for peace, what he wanted for her in her final days; yellow for hope, what he clung to desperately; silver for time, the one thing slipping away. He believed if he could just sell enough 200 balloons, he'd be able to surprise Margaret on her birthday. But no one asked about the sign. No one asked about the meaning behind the colors. He was just an old man with a balloon bucket. Until someone finally listened. It was a gloomy Wednesday. Rain drizzled from the sky, and people rushed by with umbrellas. Eddie sat beneath a torn blue tarp, balloons sagging in the wet air. He hadn't made a single dollar all day. That's when a man in a gray hoodie approached. In his early 30s, unshaven, with kind eyes, he asked how much for 5 balloons. Eddie, shivering, responded, $10. The man handed him a crisp $100 bill. No change, Eddie mumbled. "Keep it," the man said. He then crouched beside Eddie and asked, "Why balloons?" Eddie hesitated. But something in the man's eyes felt different. Safe. So, for the first time, he told someone the full story about his wife, about the stroke, about the colors, about the 200-balloon goal. The man, whose name was Jordan Monroe, listened silently. Then he pulled out his phone, not to mock, but to record Eddie's story. He uploaded the video to social media with a caption that read, "This man sells balloons to get back to his wife. Let's help him get there." By morning, the video had gone viral. Millions watched. Tears were shed. Hearts were touched. And suddenly, Eddie was no longer invisible. The power of the internet surged behind Eddie's story. Within 24 hours, the video had over 7 million views. Donations began pouring in from across the globe. Jordan launched a GoFundMe titled #BalloonsForMargaret, which surpassed $100,000 in 2 days. Local news stations picked up the story. Major networks followed. Eddie was invited to appear on daytime TV. Crowds lined up at his corner not to ridicule, but to buy balloons, take selfies, offer hugs, and share their own stories of love and loss. One woman whispered, "My husband died last year." "Your story reminded me of our last dance," another father said. "My daughter has Down syndrome. She loves balloons. You're her hero now." Eddie went from being mocked to being honored. Children brought him drawings. A local artist painted a mural of him and Margaret surrounded by balloons. Schools began using his story in lesson plans about empathy and humanity. The most incredible moment came when a large delivery truck pulled up to his corner, and out came a custom-built balloon cart, donated by a company that had been inspired by his story. But for Eddie, it was never about fame. It was about one thing: going home to his wife. On a sunny Sunday morning, Eddie stood in front of his old house in Vermont. Jordan stood beside him holding a suitcase and a bouquet of yellow tulips. Thanks to the donations, not only had Eddie paid for his wife's care, he had also managed to buy back their old home. Margaret sat in her wheelchair by the front porch. When she saw Eddie, she gasped, her hand covering her mouth. Tears streamed down her cheeks. "You came back," she whispered. "I sold every balloon I had," Eddie said softly, "and strangers helped me buy the last one." They embraced, fragile arms holding each other tight. A lifetime of love restored in a single moment. That evening, the two sat on their porch, watching the sunset. Eddie handed her a shadow box frame containing 4 preserved balloons: red, blue, yellow, and silver. Jordan smiled and said, "You didn't just sell balloons, Mr. Callahan. You gave the world something to believe in." As the stars appeared in the sky, Eddie looked up and whispered, "Thank you." They laughed while popping his balloons. But they didn't know he was just trying to hold on to the one thing that still mattered: love. And when the world finally listened, gave that love back tenfold.